Well, hello friends. Welcome back to the car. So in the last video, we were celebrating 10,000 subscribers on this channel, and I invited you to ask me anything. And I got a whole lot of comments on that video and a lot of questions. So today we're going to start going through a bunch of those comments and answering questions as we go. And I'm just going to do these in chronological order here. So first comment first. So Okrites TV writes, congratulations, Andreas. I'm always amazed at how good you are at learning and implementing new things, how thoughtful you are about a lot of things, and how positive you are in general. Now for my question. If I remember correctly, you once mentioned that you are married. How do you manage to have so much free time for programming and maintain a healthy relationship at the same time? I have a wife and 2 kids, and I hardly have any time left to spend on hobby projects. Greetings from Oliver. Well, thank you, Oliver, for those kind words. Yes, I am indeed married. I've been married for 7 years. My wife and I, we are both very independent people, but we share a workspace. So we work together on our own things, and it works out really well for us. And don't have any children, so outside of work, my time is free to spend on what I like, so I spend it all on programming, basically, or the vast majority of it, as you can probably tell. And there's no big secret to it. That's the whole thing. Okay, so Siscanty writes, "You deserve at least another 1,000,000 subscribers. Thank you very much for your excellent work." Well, thanks, man. I don't know if 1,000,000 people would want to watch me programming, but at the same time, I never would have suspected 10,000 people would want to watch me programming. So I don't know. Maybe we'll get to 1,000,000. Wouldn't that be something? Anyways, Mark Kopenga writes, if you had not open sourced Serenity, or it wasn't picked up by an open source community, would you still have gone strong working on Serenity, or would you have lost interest already? Well, I don't think there exists a reality where I didn't make Serenity open source, because um, that has always been my personal interest to share code with people. And I've talked about this before about growing up in a closed source environment and always feeling kind of stifled and limited by not having access to code for things. And for me, open source was this great liberator of my mind and of my interest in programming, that it just opened everything up. So I don't see myself closing down ever again. And even when I worked at Apple, for example, or at Nokia, I always worked on open source projects at those companies, because that has always been my interest. So there isn't a reality where Serenity isn't open source. And Mark also asks another question. He says, the YouTube videos are amazing, in my opinion. There is just something to the rawness of the content, though this is just what I think. But if editing was super easy and not time consuming, would your YouTube videos be any different? Oh, okay. So like, if I could edit my videos very easily and quickly, would I do that and make the videos very different? I don't think so. For me, it's very important to present a realistic portrayal of programming, and I think if I were to edit my videos and like cut out the frustration or cut out the mistakes, you wouldn't get like the real thing. And I think a big reason why I make videos and post them online is for people with less experience to get a chance to see what it looks like once you get to a higher level of experience. And I don't want to misrepresent how much easier things get, but things do get easier, obviously, as you get more experience. But I want people to see realistically how much easier it gets, right? So uh, preserving the realism is very important to me. That's why I don't think I will ever edit. Although I have edited out um, particularly loud sneezes and stuff in the past, um, but not really much other than that. But I'm really glad to hear that you appreciate the rawness of the content and this video as well, right? Like I'm not editing these car videos either because I want to present my thoughts unfiltered and um, just coming out of my head as we go. I think that's just the kind of channel I want to make, and that's the kind of channel I want to watch too. Like I much prefer watching somebody stumble a little bit to express when expressing themselves rather than somebody scripted or somebody edited. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, or maybe this will be a new fashion. Who knows? Anyways, thank you. So Alex writes, congrats on 10K. I bet you are past it at this point in your career, but how do you deal with imposter syndrome? I've received a lot of negative criticism to a pull request that I submitted recently, and I feel like I should have known better. So imposter syndrome, I think nobody ever gets over imposter syndrome. It's just part of, seems to be part of our culture as programmers, and it comes from different places for different people. For me, I struggled a long time with not having any formal education. I am a high school dropout, and it was weird for many years to find myself among, people with PhDs and stuff, working side by side with them. And it used to make me think that that they were better than me, or that they know all these things that I don't, and what am I even doing here? Like, when are they going to figure out that that I don't know anything and kick me out? But truth be told, none of us are imposters. Um, we're all just programmers, and um, the imposter syndrome is in your head, right? That's as far as I've gotten with beating imposter syndrome, is that I've understood and internalized the fact that it's in my head. So when I do feel lesser, or if I feel intimidated by something, um, I've grown far enough now to know that well, this is just my head messing with me, right? And everybody else around me is struggling with their own version of the same thing. So anyway, um, I'm and then you mentioned also that you got a lot of negative criticism on a pull request recently, and you know, you never quite know what you're going to get when you submit a pull request to some project, because open source projects are run by people, and people are unpredictable and come in many shapes and moods. And I think that sometimes you get grouches, sometimes you get really happy, cheerful people. But if you want to work on something together with people, then you have to sort of get used to the fact that people are different, and it's not always going to be on your own terms, right? And obviously there are limits to how much bad attitude you should take from somebody, but I do think that that it is worth to try to get along with people within reasonable margins. So I guess my advice to you there is to not take it personally, right? Because when you're making a pull request to a project, that is your code asking to be submitted to a project. It's not you asking to submit code. So if people criticize your pull requests, they're criticizing your code. So you have to like remove yourself from that and take the criticism, and if it's constructive, which I hope it is, then apply that to the code, not necessarily to yourself, right? Anyway, yeah, like don't take it personally, and just get back on the horse and do it more times and do it with other projects, and you'll see like one bad experience will soon be evened out by two good experiences. Just keep going, man. All right, Sotolf writes, Grattis, Andreas. Well, thank you. My question is, how do you keep up motivation? I usually go strong with programming for a month or two, and then end up with trying to bite over something over my size, and I inevitably burn myself out. Don't program much for a couple of months before starting the cycle again. How do you find stuff that is interesting, but not so hard that you lose the fun of it? Aha. Yeah, how do I keep up motivation? I guess my big secret trick for staying motivated is that I have a lot of projects. So I have the SerenityOS project, which has like 100 or something sub projects. So whenever I sort of lose interest in something temporarily, then I just switch over to some other part of the project, and now it's fresh and interesting again. And this is something that I hadn't figured out until I started the Serenity project. But since starting it, I haven't really struggled with motivation much at all. So I think at the very least, you'll want to have minimum two projects at any time, so that when one of them, when you're just not making progress on one of them, you can just procrastinate on that one by working on the other one instead. And then when you get bored of working on that one, then you procrastinate there and work on the other thing. So in that way, you're always making progress by procrastinating, right? And I think that is a very good strategy. At least it works really well for me, I should say. And also, like, when things are not interesting, things that you've found interesting initially, but they sort of lose their luster or you lose interest in them, it's okay to abandon something if it's not interesting. Much better to spend some time on something else where you're genuinely motivated to work on it, and then come back later to the thing where maybe you lost interest, instead of burning yourself out by insisting that you work on something that's not motivating. But yeah, I do think that having at the minimum two projects to rotate between is key to programming like consistently and often or regularly without too many breaks. All right, so Sebastian writes, I have to thank YouTube for recommending me your channel. I've learned a lot. You are a nice teacher, and I wish you the best and a long life to Serenity. Well, thank you. That's very nice to hear. I've never thought of myself as a teacher, but I mean, before starting this YouTube channel, but it is one of the nicest things to hear that I'm a nice teacher. So thank you very much. And then Susie Bros writes, congrats on 10K. It's not quite one shifted left 16 times yet, but awesome nonetheless. Yeah, indeed, it's not. You mentioned that you eventually want to use Serenity as your main operating system, but I wonder whether the lack of GPU acceleration would be a problem for you. Nah, it's not going to be a problem. It will slow some things down, but once we get there, then we'll have to deal with that. And there are GPUs with documentations, so once we are in a position where everything else is working and GPU acceleration is the thing holding me back, then maybe I can just pick up the documentation for one of those Intel GPUs or something and go to town. I'm not worried about that. And I mean, you've seen me programming a lot. Like, do I look like the kind of guy who uses GPU acceleration a lot? The the main thing, I guess, is that I encode videos, right? And I record videos. So that might be the thing. But we'll deal with it when we get there, you know? I definitely am not the type of person who tries to predict problems in the future. I just focus on what's here in front of me right now. Okay. And then Ahmed writes, my question is, keep being awesome. Well, you keep being awesome, Ahmed. Thank you. All right. And then Arthur writes, congratulations on 10K. The most inspiring channel on YouTube, and you seem to be a very humble person, which I admire. Well, yes. Some say I might be the most humble person in the whole world. I'm just kidding. So, he has two questions. First one is, if you could go back 10 years, what would you tell your younger self? And then he also asks, what is your day job? So I'll start with the second one. My day job is I'm a programmer at a industrial networking company, and I'm working on industrial networking appliances, and currently building some 5G products for like machine builders and system integrators type stuff. It's low-level firmware Linux programming. It's pretty chill. And yeah, that's my day job. And then the other question was, if I could go back 10 years, what would you tell your younger self? You know, how much time do I get with my younger self? I got a lot of things to tell him. But I guess I would have to keep it short. If I knew that he would listen to me, then I think the main thing I would tell my younger self is that the confidence that you get from drugs and alcohol is not anywhere near the confidence you get from being honest and getting physically fit. Because I've spent a lot of time and energy on using drugs to make myself feel better about myself, to make myself feel more confident, to feel cool. And it was all for nothing, right? It got me nothing but pain and the destruction of friendships and relationships, and the destruction of my health. And today I know that by just always being honest and by working on my physical health and fitness, you know, by eating well and training regularly and hard and sleeping enough every night, then I feel infinitely more confident than I ever did while taking drugs. Even like drugs specifically designed to give you confidence, or whatever you want to call it. I feel more confident today than I ever did. And if I could somehow convey that to myself from 10 years ago, and he would listen and believe me, that would have been very productive. But I don't know. I think that's the advice I would give myself. Just forget about drugs and alcohol, man. Just be honest with people and eat well, sleep well, and train hard, and you'll feel better than ever. All right. So Omar writes, could you please explain to us how system calls actually work? How the compiler knows the address of a system call? Thank you. All right. So I'll just explain how they work in Serenity. So in Serenity, system calls are implemented through software interrupts. So the Intel CPU has this mechanism called interrupt, and there are two kinds of interrupts. There are software interrupts and hardware interrupts. Hardware interrupt is where a peripheral device tells the CPU, hey, something happened and I need you to pay attention to me right now. And that's how, for instance, incoming network traffic gets the attention of the CPU, which can then react to the traffic. And a software interrupt is where an instruction in your program generates an interrupt programmatically. So the response by the CPU to both types of interrupt is to jump to a predefined location in memory. So basically, you put the location of an interrupt handler function in the interrupt vector table, or I guess it's the interrupt descriptor table in the CPU. And then when an interrupt instruction is executed or a hardware interrupt occurs, the CPU will jump to that predefined piece of code and execute it. So the system calls in Serenity use software interrupt hex 82, and oh, we went dark. Let's see if we can get the lights back on here. Yeah, so it's interrupt hex 82, and then we have up to three arguments, three 32-bit arguments, which are passed in the I think it's EAX, EBX, and ECX registers. And whoops, we lost power there for a moment, but now we're back. So yeah, so we pass arguments through these registers, and then the interrupt handler routine for int82 knows to look at these registers. And for some system calls with like 3 arguments or fewer, the registers are enough. But if you have a syscall with a lot more arguments, like mmap, for example, then since we don't have that many registers in our calling convention, then we put all of the parameters to mmap in a struct, and then we pass a pointer to that struct to the int82 handler. And then when you enter the kernel, you end up in this like little piece of assembly code that is the entry point for the syscall handler. And it's just a tiny little piece of code that pushes a bunch of things on the stack, like pushes everything on the stack so that we can restore it before returning back to the user program. And then it jumps to a C++ function that looks at the content of the EAX register. So the EAX register determines which function, which syscall you're calling. Oh yeah, right. So that's why the EAX is the syscall number, and EBX, ECX, and EDX are the 3 arguments. Right, that's how it goes. And you can find it's really easy to understand if you are somewhat familiar with Intel x86 stuff. You can just look at kernel slash syscall.cpp in the SerenityOS source code, and um, it's not complicated. And I think you can probably find an introductory text about it on the OS Dev wiki as well, if you want to learn more about it. Anyways, that's I'm not going to get too deep into that because we have to move forward. So Matt Jojo says, "Congrats on 10K subs. I'm glad to hear that it has been such a positive influence on you." Well, yeah, thank you. As for my question, I often worry that I'm not a programmer, but just somebody who has a hobby in programming. Apart from this probably being at least partially imposter syndrome, what do you feel has made you from someone that can program into a programmer? Um, huh. I don't know. Um, I mean, if you enjoy programming, then you're a programmer. I think you're overthinking this. If you have a hobby in programming, then you're a programmer, right? I I learned this beautiful thing a few days ago that apparently the word amateur comes from the word amor, which means love. So an amateur is somebody who has a love for something, and that's why they do the thing. And I think that's absolutely beautiful, and it really changed my perspective on like amateur versus professional, because I definitely love programming, and I have no problem saying that I'm an amateur um, programmer, right? Because I'm also a professional programmer, but I program in my free time because I freaking love it. So I'm an amateur programmer, and I think you are too. So don't worry so much. Just just be a programmer. You already are. So Samuel writes, "How did you get started and know how to write an operating system from scratch? Would you consider going over modules of your code and doing higher level explanations of what they do and how they work?" Okay, so how did I get started? Um, so for many years, my big pet project was an x86 PC emulator. So you can find it on my GitHub. It's called Computron, and I never released it or anything. It was always just a hacking side project for me. But it's a pretty capable emulator that can run DOS and Windows and older versions of Linux and stuff. So from building this, I was very familiar with PC hardware and the x86 CPU. So um, I had like debugged like the CPU side and the hardware side of like running operating systems many times. So when I decided I wanted to write my own OS, it was pretty easy because I already knew from debugging my emulator what operating systems want to do. So I could pretty much just get started and just hack out the code, and it, I didn't really feel um, hindered early on, and but of course, like not everybody, not everybody wants to build a computer emulator just so that they can learn how to build an operating system. Um, but that's how I got started, and that's how I knew how to do everything um, in the beginning. And then, would I consider going over modules of my code and doing higher level explanations? Yeah, I mean, I already have a couple of videos on this channel in the presentations playlist where I go through various systems in Serenity and talk about in pretty great detail actually how they work. And a bunch of those videos are kind of old by now and a bit outdated. So um, Might be time to make some more, but at this point, I guess it would also be interesting to make some higher level videos because the system is becoming quite large, and it might be good to do um, some high level, tall perspective type overview videos because we haven't really done that, and I'm always assuming that that people have a decent feel for how the system is put together, but unless you are working on it actively, it's probably a bit overwhelming. Um, so yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, I would definitely consider that. Yeah, thank you for the suggestion. All right, so Eridanus writes, first of all, congratulations for 10K subs. Thank you. Will you upload new videos about emulator hacking? I am trying to learn customized emulation in depth in order to use it in security research, so I really want to see how, let's say, a kernel module could be emulated in this way. Actually, it may be interesting for a lot of your subs. I will probably make more videos about emulator hacking. It's a subject that I find super interesting personally, and I have a whole bunch of things I would like to do with the user space emulator in Serenity. And um, in the future or at some point, I am probably going to want to be able to emulate the Serenity kernel in some way. So that's obviously not going to run in the user space emulator because the UE only runs Ring 3 code, so it only runs user code, right? It can't run Ring 0 code, and it doesn't have any hardware emulation or hardware abstraction or anything like that. It's just a straight user space emulator. So yeah, I will very, very, very most likely make more emulator hacking videos. Although I don't know what they're going to be about, but um, but the general theme will continue for sure. Okay, so Yori writes, hey, congrats on the 10K. It's awesome to see your channel grow into what it is now. I remember subscribing before your first 1,000. Well, thanks. It's I'm really glad to see that you're still here. That's awesome. All right, so here's my first question. So how did you work up the courage to create and start uploading your work online? I may be projecting a little too much of my own self onto you for this question. If so, sorry, but you don't strike me as the vlogger type. Okay, so my courage to create and start uploading my work online. Uh, that took a lot of courage originally. It was very uncomfortable, and I was very, very scared. But um, I was in a new place in my life at the time where I had quite recently gotten out of rehab, and I was determined to try to live life in a new way. And one of my main gripes or my main issues with the way I used to live was that I was very secretive and very private, and I always tried to hide because I was ashamed of the way I was living. I was ashamed of what I was doing. So I sort of figured that if I could try to do something in public, then that would be an entirely new and different life, right? And I would just put myself in a public space and be completely honest about everything and see what happens. And this is that. You're watching that, and it's been quite successful. So I'm really happy that I decided to try it. But I was very uncomfortable originally, and um, I feel pretty comfortable with it now, so that's cool. But it's been a gradual thing, and I'm maybe I'm not the traditional vlogger type, but maybe there's room for non-traditional vlogger types too. So, seemed to be worth a shot. Okay, so Yuri's second question is, where does your design inspiration for Serenity come from? Is the architecture based on gripes with existing operating systems, or is it based on something you like? For example, how the BSDs are an entire OS, not a kernel, or Apple's memory reclaiming. That part of Serenity is still very cool to me. Yeah, to me too. Is there some other philosophy and criteria you created? How and where do you decide to implement pure POSIX versus an extension or something unique? If I'm being a little too greedy with my two questions, just pick the one you like the most or have the most to say about. I'm just going to answer both. So my design inspiration for Serenity is not based on gripes with existing operating systems, but indeed rather on things I like about existing operating systems. My thinking behind this whole thing was that there are such beautiful concepts in operating systems throughout the years, but there isn't really one that captures everything that I like in just the way that I like it. So I figured I'll just take all the cool things from the different places, the cool things that I've liked over the years, and assemble them into a mashup or remix or whatever, and try to build the most beautiful thing that I could think of. So that's what SerenityOS is. It's just my mixtape of operating systems and computer programs. Yeah. I think somebody's burning rubber in this parking lot. I don't know what's going on. But hopefully it's not overpowering the audio. Anyway, yeah, so it is based on just things that I like, things that we like, the people who work on Serenity. And there isn't really some philosophy and criteria. It's more like a feeling. This feeling that computer software is or can be awesome, and I grew up using a lot of Microsoft systems, and I was really, really in love with the visual look of Windows 2000-ish and the Office software around that time. And as you can probably tell from what I spend my free time building, and that's what I'm trying to do. And then other people who also work on Serenity, they sort of bring their things that they like to the table, and there isn't really anything formal. It's more like I don't know. That's a bit tricky. I think it is just like me doing my best to make the most beautiful thing that I can think of, and I think Windows 2000 was beautiful, and I think KDE 3 was beautiful. I think GNOME 2 was pretty good. I think OS 10 in some releases was really beautiful, and OS 9 certainly had charm. And I'm just trying to mash these things up to make something nice. I don't know. I feel like I'm not answering this question so well, but I mean, you asked if it's based on gripes with existing systems or based on something I like. It's definitely based on something I like. So we'll leave it at that. All right. And then Zach writes, do you think we're headed for a tech utopia or tech dystopia? Young programmers today have much better access to information than you or I did, but their devices are getting more locked down and focused on consumption. Will we end up as decrepit skeletons crouched in a fetal position while our heads are wrapped in VR goggles? Also, hi. Well, hi, Zach. I don't think we're headed for a tech utopia or dystopia. I think there will always be hackable machines, and there's always going to be people making tools for young programmers. And if you look at what like regular consumer people, like normies or whatever you want to call them, do online, yeah, like there's always going to be something to distract the normies, whether it's social media like it is today, or um, TV was very big when I was a kid. You know, like all the adults around me, they were watching TV, talking about TV, and now they watch Netflix, talk about HBO, and there's always going to be these things, and there's always going to be hacker spaces on the side of that, and I don't think that that's going away. But some things are weird. I do agree that the whole like the whole extreme focus on entertainment that is seeping through our culture is it has a bad smell to it, and I personally don't partake in much entertainment. I used to. I used to do a lot of that, but at some point I realized that it was stealing my time, and um, there were all these things that I could do that I didn't do because I felt, fulfilled by entertainment, and I didn't like that, so I stopped entertaining myself. But I don't think we're headed for a utopia or dystopia. I think we're just heading forward, and tech will keep getting faster, smaller. Cool products will happen. There will always be hackable systems and hacker spaces and hacker culture. And young programmers today have awesome access to information, and I think that's only going to improve. So I'm very, very optimistic. Okay, and then Krigun writes, congratulations. I've been following you for years, and it's always been awesome. Been wondering, what current/future tech do you find interesting or fascinating apart from the stuff you're doing today? Followed by, what do you want to learn next or get better at? That's so cool that you've been following for years. I can't believe how I've been doing this for years already. It's very awesome. I didn't think of it that way, but yeah, it's been years now. So yeah, so what current/future tech do I find interesting or fascinating? I guess maybe I'm not super interested in current/future tech. Um, I mean, I love technology, but I'm fascinated by things that we already have, and um, I like trying to improve on things that we have instead of trying to come up with new things. Um, but I, I I guess I am interested in some of the new programming languages that are coming out. For example, I've been spending some time learning some new languages lately, and investing some time at work on researching new languages, and that's been really cool. Um, and but at the same time, like I don't think I am the this type of person who gets excited about new technology. Like I have coworkers who are super hyped about smart home type things, and that's just not me. I don't want to have any smart appliances at home. I'm perfectly happy with um, stupid scales and a dumb fridge and whatever. Um, I like I like the separation of concerns, where every device is an isolated unit that doesn't talk to the other devices. And um, yeah, I don't know. I, I I think I'm not excited about future tech. Other people are excited about future tech. Um, I'm excited about existing tech and improving existing tech. So Avindra writes, of the new features in C++ 17 or 20 or even C++ 11, which are your favorites? By that I mean, which of the new STL features or new syntax features would you have a hard time giving up? Um, well, I don't use the STL, so I don't care about the STL. Um, but which is which is my favorite new feature? I think probably I really like I like lambdas a lot. I feel that they have really improved my code. Um, I'm really happy with lambdas. And I think move semantics has been very helpful as well. Although it is unfortunate that um, that the state of a moved from object is so like poorly defined. It's it really feels like they screwed that up. But I would say lambdas. Yeah, I like lambdas. Um, yeah. Okay. So Haibao writes, I've come across a couple of similar channels. The likes slash unlikes ratio for this channel is godly. Speaking of quality. Um, yeah. So this channel definitely has a very strong likes to unlikes or dislikes ratio, and I can just say thank you for that. Like I'm so glad that the content resonates with people, and I try to I try to put out quality content and consistent content, right? And I'm glad that people like it. Um, and I appreciate the feedback. And if somebody doesn't like it, I like to hear why, because that is helpful. Okay, so Herbert writes, "Are you a fellow weeb? If so, what shows do you like?" Um, I am not a weeb. The I have watched one anime in my life. It was Andy Kelly, the Zig language creator. He told me to watch um, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and it was all right, I guess, but I didn't really get hooked. Uh, so um, I'm not really a weeb, but I got nothing against weebs. Just do your thing. Okay, and then Alexander writes, have you tried out TempleOS, Menuet, and Haiku? Do you think each of them has an idea that Serenity could adopt? Yeah, I've used TempleOS, MenuetOS, and Haiku. Um, it's been a long time. The most recent one I used was TempleOS. I used Menuet many years ago, and Haiku I tried years ago as well, I think. And I'm sure that they have ideas that Serenity could adopt. I think in TempleOS, I kind of dig the I like the doldoc format thing where you have like this rich text format with like pervasively in the system. That's kind of an interesting concept. And I don't know how you would apply it in a system like Serenity, but I think that it is kind of innovative. And I find the C JIT shell concept kind of interesting as well. Although I don't know if I would adopt that in Serenity actually. Oh, we um, lost power here. And Menuet and Haiku, it's been too long ago. Like I don't remember them well enough. I should probably mess with them sometime. But I'm sure that they all have concepts that Serenity could adopt. And maybe we'll take a look at them at some point and see what we could borrow. Anyways, I should probably wrap it up. There are still so many questions. So I'm gonna continue in the next video. So thank you very much to everybody whose questions we answered today, and for I really appreciate that you sent these in, and thank you everybody for hanging out with me in the car while I go through some questions and answer them. I'll see you next time. Bye.